Chair mentioned before, we want to welcome you back here. You've testified before, and in your years here as a member of Congress, you were one of the more respected members on both sides of the aisle because of your integrity and working across party lines. So
very kind of you to say.
Good to have you here. It's very true. So
thank you.
Now I'll ask you the tough questions.
No. And I'll try to maintain my integrity.
Although it does come up in several other industries, the venture capital issue seems to come up, I think is most prevalent in the biomedical field. And could you explain why that is the case?
Yeah. This is a highly, highly risky business. I was at Amgen's facility. Amgen is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, biotech companies in the world. So their facility in Boulder, Colorado last week. And they went through a presentation. They'll take 150 different compounds or molecules and begin to try to bring each and every one of them to a place where it can cure a disease. As the attrition of the process of success and failure is such that one of those 150 ultimately makes its way to the FDA. This is hard science, and it's risky science, and what happens is, typically, as I said, a product will, an academician will develop something, they take it out into they spin off a little company, and they find themselves squarely in the valley of death. Because they know they have a good idea. The brilliant scientists really believe in this product, this compound, this molecule. But Mr. Heeson's people are going to be skeptical. They have lots of opportunities, and they're not in the business of taking. They're risk takers, but they're not extraordinary. They're not foolish risk takers. So. The public-private partnerships, be it SBIR grants, be it state programs that nurture these little companies, are all there for the purpose of helping these entrepreneurial scientists get through the valley of death, prove or not prove that they have something here, and then that's the point that the venture capitalists will come in. And I can tell you, and Mr. Heeson can tell you, when you talk to investors today, they're not rushing into the biotech space. They know that all kinds of policies that the state and federal governments can adopt, they can contribute to our success or failure. We can't do this without the venture capital contributions. And as I've said before, it is clear from the congressional record that Congress said years ago, when a company attracts venture capital, it's a very good sign that some very smart and skeptical people think they're onto something, and we want to reward companies that can achieve that level of credibility, not punish them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Heeson. I'll go to you next if I can. Would you expound upon why you consider the SBA or Small Business Administration's position on independent ownership and control unacceptable as it applies to venture capital firms?
Sure. As stated in my testimony, when you look at a venture capital firm, it is normally about a dozen individuals that are employed by that firm, sometimes literally only 2 or 3. You know, you look at the ones in your hometown, Blue Chip is the largest, and if they have 10 people, I'd be surprised, and yet they have a major impact on the Cincinnati economy. So these are very small entities. Now, over the process of having a fund, they may invest in 20 companies. That's high. Maybe 15 companies. Now, when you invest in those companies early on, they may have 5, 6, 10 employees. What you want to do as you're investing in these companies is to grow those companies, of course. So hopefully you will have companies at the end that have several hundred employees. Because you have grown those small companies just like you want to. So if you start to aggregate a venture capital firm and all the other venture capital firms that you're going to co-invest with, because you do not go into you do not invest in a biotechnology company on your own. You don't have that much money. Particularly in the Midwest, you are going to get 4 or 5 venture capital firms who are going to put their resources together and invest in that biotechnology company. So you have 4 or 5 who have 10 employees, so that's 50, but then they all have different portfolio companies out there. I might have 15, another person might have 10, another firm might have 8, and they all have 7 to 10 employees, but you also have some of those growing companies. It's very easy to get to that 500 person, and of course that's what you want. You want to be growing these companies. So the idea that you are aggregating all of these companies, and they could be biotechnology companies, they can be clean tech companies, they can be IT companies, because a venture capitalist invests in lots of different areas. They might have absolutely no correlation. But under what the SBA is doing is literally aggregating all of those employees and saying, you now are a large entity, and therefore that one particular company that is in the portfolio cannot get an SBIR grant. It's just doesn't make sense at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lay, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Could you explain further why you believe it's important that the award amounts be increased?
Certainly. Well, I think as Dr. Matthews had stated as well, since 1992, obviously the landscape has changed significantly. And although the SBIR funding is not the only source of funding, obviously it is part of that public-private relationship. I don't think you'll find anyone who will argue about the increasing regulatory requirements that are needed at the FDA and relates to user fees, things of that nature. The clinical data that is required to satisfy the payer community, both the private insurers and the CMS. So throughout the research and development and life cycle of an early stage company, before they get to commercialization, they're looking ahead and saying, okay, I've got to meet all these endpoints here to satisfy the FDA, to satisfy CMS or the private payers, to satisfy the markets. And the dollar amount, not having that move at all since 1992, I don't think sensitizes or appreciate the changing landscape. That being said, there's a lot of promise ahead, but I don't think anyone can argue that some of the hurdles have been increased. And so increasing that threshold, I think, coupled with increasing or allowing all small companies, regardless of their venture capital investment structure, to have access to these funds, I think will really, as Mr. Heaton said, achieve the objective of ensuring that the government and the private sector work together to develop the best technologies to really deliver the care that's needed in the future. So I think I commend the committee for the draft for increasing those limits.
Thank you.